A day after Penn State football wins the Pinstripe Bowl, actually, it was announced hours after Penn State won the Pinstripe Bowl, the Nittany Lions get another commit in the class of 2026. They're building it back up. Halfway there, Ryan, right? So I think 10 commits at this point in the class.
I don't know if they're getting to 20, T. Frank, but yeah, they're getting there. I don't know if they're getting
if they got halfway, like let's say 21, 22 is the normal. If they get close to halfway, I think that's actually pretty impressive given where they were a month ago. But Ben Whitver is the latest Nittany Lion. Normally I let you introduce him, but I've rambled here for long enough. So Ryan Snyder, recruiting reporter for Blue White Illustrated. Tell us about this one. This is going to be a really interesting video. Might go a little bit longer just because there's so many twists and turns. But give us the story on Ben Whitver.
Yeah, 6'2", 190, right? That's what we have him down for Powhatan, Virginia. If you guys remember Powhatan, that is, of course, where Matt Henderson also came out of. And really, that's kind of how Whitver came on the radar for the original staff, the previous staff, excuse me. He obviously they were out scouting Matt a lot, and Matt coming up here kind of brought Ben into the picture a bit, and he eventually camped at Penn State twice in 2024, and both were solid performances. Ran like a mid 4.5 then. I think he had a low 4.5 in the second one. Consistent shuttle times in I believe it was 4.3, 4.4 kind of range. Good broad jumps and 9.5 or up, which are quality times or quality jumps. So eventually, he kind of does come onto the previous staff's radar. But also, kind of when that happened, if you remember back, Jashir Rogers committed pretty early, and I think it was June 2024. LeVar Keys comes up for the Lash Bash and / Whiteout camp and commits shortly thereafter. Jaquaden Guilford then also committed to Penn State before the end of 2024. I think it was in November, I want to say, somewhere in that time frame. So they kind of filled up pretty quickly at the position. And of course, remember, Davion Brown was still out there. Connor Salmon was still out there. Travis Johnson was still out there. I mean, there were a lot of guys. I'm sure I'm missing one or two. And I think that kind of kept Whitver from progressing up, the previous staff's board a little bit. But what I'll say here, too, is that he goes out to last year's Under Armour camp, which you have that right in front of us if you're watching on YouTube, puts up, first off, 6'2.5" now. So, he continued growing. We've had him at 190, so 186. That makes sense. But, you see there, you'll see a laser time 4.49. And that's really good at these Under Armour camps. I mean, truthfully, I tell people all the time, if I see a kid run a 4.4 there, that's like seeing a kid run like a 4.2 hand time up at Penn State camp. So, to have basically a 4.5 there, it kind of, that kind of surprised me a little bit to some degree, because I don't know if he looks that fast, right? But he's kind of one of those guys because he has a 22 mile an hour.
I would say on film he looks pretty fast his senior year. I would say that does match up what you see from him on film.
So there's a lot of positives there as far as athletically. I think that's always kind of been there. And then, but like look what he's done on the field too. I mean, he's now the all-time leader in Virginia. For yards, 3,501. So that's, from what I understand, that's the career record for high school in Virginia. He's third all time in receptions. I believe he finished at 209. I want to say, and that's third all time in the state. He's a 4-year starter. And look, Powhatan's not, it's not a powerhouse. It's not the Oscar Smiths and Vernias and some of those major schools that we always see producing quality or countless Division I guys every year. But, I mean, he's also playing LC Bird. He's playing Manchester. He's playing Huguenot. He's playing some Midlothian. Like, those schools have all produced, 1AA kind of quality players. I mean, regularly. I mean, I would say every couple of years they certainly get a good quality, Division I player out of those kind of schools. So it's not like he was playing what we would consider like single A football or anything like that. And they have the same system, I think, Virginia. I think it's 1 through 6, I believe. So it's not like he's playing on the low end of that spectrum against really small schools. So there's a lot there, I think, that on the field, film-wise and athletically makes sense. Of course, he ends up going to JMU, commits to JMU last summer, and
this is the part that confuses me. Yeah, this is the part that confuses me here, because, okay, so, was Quincy Porter part of the conversation in this particular class, or is that 2024?
That was last year,
that was 2024,
okay. Previous class,
but, to your point, they were after a bunch of different receivers, but to land at JMU, unless that was his decision, unless that was his choice, surprises me, because I do think, and generally I'll put this up here again, Ryan, a 3-star, and from the recruiting rankings, a 3-star, I think he's an 87.
Somewhere there. I believe so.
120th overall in our rankings. And like, as we said, once you get past a certain point, it kind of auto ranks everybody. And so like these numbers don't match up with what I see here on film from Ben Whitver. And we'll get to that here in just a second. But like, did we collectively miss on Ben Whitver here? Because like, I'm surprised, honestly. Like, we'll get into it in a second, but like, what are your thoughts on kind of his recruiting journey to go from James Madison and then all the way to Penn State? Because Penn State fans watching this video are going to say, okay, they're just taking him because they need bodies. I don't think that's necessarily the case. You gave the athletic measurements and all those things. So what's going on here? Do you have any insight into that?
Truthfully, I don't want to say I have a ton of like, okay, why did he not have more FBS offers, right? I mean, that's something we'll have to dig on. I'll obviously reach out to his coach. I mean, Matt Henderson's dad was actually his coach for 3 of his 4 years. And then Henderson comes to Penn State and his dad steps down because he wants to, be able to follow his son more, once he made the move to Penn State. So it's something we'll keep digging on. Obviously, right? Yesterday, we just covered the bowl game. And then today we're, getting ready for the transfer portal. So truthfully, it's kind of got put to the side a little bit after everything. And that's, something I'll dig on here tonight, tomorrow, and the days forward. What I will say, though, is if you do remember back to Matt Henderson's recruitment, Matt had like no big time offers before Ty Howe goes down to spring evaluation period, watches him work out, gets some verified information, and he blew up after that. I mean, Matt Henderson had a ton of quality schools after a school like Penn State goes after a guy who's a quality tight end, right? And Penn State's obviously their tight end recruiting is pretty well known. But like, I know Michigan State and Maryland, Vatech, and I think there were 1 or 2 others, maybe Pitt, I want to say. Like, he started getting a lot of those. And I'm not saying that, maybe that would have happened if, another bigger, 2 or 3 bigger schools kind of came on the radar. Maybe it snowballs. But I just remember back to Henderson's recruitment. Like, that does seem to be a thing with that school where it's not maybe – as highly recruited as some of the others in that region. And then once maybe schools get on the radar a little bit, they see it more where, he came to Penn State, but there also aren't a ton of other like school camps that I'm aware of as far as like massively major ones. Yeah. But again, that's something I'll dig on too. But one thing I don't know how. Go ahead.
I don't know how he doesn't have a Virginia Tech or a Virginia offer. Like, he's clearly good enough to play one of those schools.
I don't disagree with that.
Just shocked.
I'm kind of surprised Brent Pry and them did not go after him a little bit more. That I totally agree with. But I also just don't remember like the other thing too, T. Frank, is like how many receivers did they? Obviously, it's hard to go back and look at all that stuff, right? But like, did Vatech have a bunch of receivers committed at the time? Because that's kind of why Penn State previous staff was like, well, because you got to remember what the region was too. Well, the region was pretty good at receiver in this cycle.
That's a fair point.
I mean, compared to some other years where there's not a ton. So there's a lot of factors there. I don't want to overthink it too much because that's something I got to drill on, and that's why I try to do those coach interviews, right? But Ben, we love you, but committing like 30 minutes after the bowl game is not the best time for me, at least, to be digging on that stuff. We were a little busy yesterday, but like I said, we'll get to it here in the coming days. But I do think I will say, like, out of the players that they have added, from Iowa State and all that, Whitver is certainly one of the most intriguing ones. But Whitver's also the one that we have like quality testing data for, and that's something we talk about a ton on the show. We try to use that data and relate it to our experiences and what we know is really good and what other guys do in the region. And that's the issue too with a lot of the Iowa State guys. We just don't. We have some track numbers and different things like that, but not being able to stack up these Under Armour camps and all that just makes it a little bit more difficult. But that's also why, to me, because we do have that information, that's why he's a little more intriguing, if that makes sense.
I tried not to lead us too much, although obviously my opinion was very much in that line of questioning there. We'll get to what I think about him in just 1 second. But of course, please like the video, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. I mean, we're cooking right now. We have film reviews over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We're pausing in the middle of that to come here and do this. We'll have our Monday recap show of Penn State and Clemson. So all kinds of great stuff. And then, of course, all of our commitment videos, which are brought to you by AJ Freedom Financial. In football and in finance, having a strong game plan makes all the difference. AJ Freedom Financial helps individuals build personalized financial strategies that align with their goals, timelines, and risk tolerance. From investment guidance and retirement planning to 401k rollovers, HSA assistance, and legacy and wealth strategies, AJ Freedom Financial offers thoughtful, one-on-one support backed by industry experience and a commitment to transparency. Whether you're starting to invest, planning for retirement, or you simply want a second look at your financial approach, AJ Freedom Financial is here to help you make informed, confident decisions. Schedule a no-obligation consultation today at www.ajffi.com. Call 866-383-6899 or email info@ajffi.com. Again, that's ajffi.com. Call 866-383-6899 or email info@ajffi.com. AJ Freedom Financial, helping Nittany Lions fans plan for what's next. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Gradient Securities, LLC. Arden Hills, Minnesota, 866-991-1539. Member FINRA, SIPC. Gradient Securities, LLC, and SEC Registered Investment Advisor offers investment advisory services under the DBA of Gradient Wealth Management. Gradient Securities, LLC, and its advisors do not render tax, legal, or accounting services. Insurance products and services offered through AJ Freedom Financial. AJ Freedom Financial and Freedom Financial Insurance, LLC are not affiliated with Gradient Securities, LLC. So, one of the things that I want to talk about here with Ben Whitver, and I'm just going to throw on his highlights here. A lot of times when I'm scouting these players, and you mentioned the athletic testing numbers, the size, those are all important. And I absolutely believe those are foundational to being a prospect, especially at a place like Penn State. They matter. They absolutely do. I don't want this to come out as like the numbers don't matter. But I have watched a lot of these prospects that go to Penn State that have great measurables and they got all the stuff. And then you watch the film and you're like, okay, so where is it? And with Ben Whitver, and this is especially true of receivers because they are, in a certain sense, not in control of their own destiny as a player. And so they only get a certain number of times where they get to touch the ball in a game. And if you keep dropping the ball or you miss or something like that, like, to me, there is a certain, like, are you good at football? Ben Whitver is really good at football. Not only does he have that vertical speed, he is a run-after-the-catch monster in as part of his offense. He gets a lot of screen passes. He gets a lot of those short area plays. He's got a good double move here. The things he puts on film are, important. It's important that it's entertaining to watch because he's a receiver, because he catches the ball when you throw it to him. I think there's a little bit of swagger to his game. I think there's, that kind of riding the line as a receiver, super emotional guy who's competitive and fiery. And again, I'm just going to come back to this. Like, he's got great hands. I know some of the highlights we showed from the Under Armour camp, he dropped a couple of balls, but watching him play the game, he does not drop a whole lot of balls. I'm still early in the process of watching some of his film, so I want to be clear about that. So there might be more that I haven't seen, but contested catches, going up for the football. He did a great job of stacking his highlights because he shows everything you want out of a receiver on film. So from a positional standpoint, quality competition, elite, or it doesn't matter, quality competition. He's making plays all over the football field. He is the Powhatan offense. Like, it runs through him. And when he makes plays, they move the football. And then when they don't make plays, he also makes plays after that to make up for some of the mistakes on offense. So, like, there's a healthy amount of respect of what I'm saying, of what I've seen him do on the football field. It's funny. To be the all-time leading receiver in Virginia history, or whatever the stat was, Ryan, you don't even have to be a good receiver to do that, but I do think generally he is. Now, the question I have, and this is kind of where I am wondering, because we were talking before the show, and I think that he did some growing late, through his junior into his senior season, because my question was 6'2", 190 sounds like a starting receiver in the Big Ten for a lot of schools. So did teams think he was tapped out in terms of his growth potential and his overall size? But the frame numbers that you brought up, the hand size, the arm length, everything here checks out. And so I'm sitting here like, what am I missing, Ryan, that he was a James Madison commit and is now at Penn State, and Penn State fans are going to go, another 3-star. And I'm like, but this one's good at football, and he's the right size, and he has the right speed, and I don't know what I'm missing here that every other school, other than Penn State, it seemed to have missed about Ben Whitver, because I like the film. I like the athlete. I don't think he runs overly complicated routes in high school, but I think he's got the ability to learn to run them. That everything seems to be there for a guy that is good at football. And I'll go back to the last thing I'll say here is to circle back to what I said at the very beginning. I learned something from Kobe Howard. It's that if you're good at football, maybe you're good at football. Like, it doesn't surprise me in retrospect that the one freshman receiver over the last several seasons that's made an impact at Penn State is the guy who was good at football in high school. And so, like, it's not just about the measurables. It's not just about the athletic testing experience, like all those things. If you bring both, that's better. So here we are with some of these deep thoughts by T. Frank of it's good to be good at football. And I don't know where to throw it to you about this, but I just again, I'm sitting out here wondering, what am I missing that all these other schools who are better at this than I am decided to pass on Ben Whitver?
Yeah, I'll come back to kind of what we said earlier. I mean, the school is part of it, or at least I think that's part of it. It's just not really ever been one of those regularly recruited schools. I mean, in our database, Matt Henderson's the only Division I prospect we have to come out of there, and Ben will be the second. Right. So let's take that into account. And then, like what I was saying earlier, okay, I rattled off all those guys earlier, the receiver, right? You know how I didn't rattle off? Messiah Hampton, I didn't rattle off. Nakir Helton's going to North Carolina. Elias Koch's going to Rutgers. Like, the region was very strong at that position. And there were quite a few guys that I think have similar numbers. Again, I don't, and I agree with you. Like, I find myself too often falling into the trap for the numbers. But I think that's just kind of how over the last couple of years I've progressed to appreciate them. And I work so hard to get them, I guess is kind of where I'm going with that.
But, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. And I don't want to come up, but there's like Whitver's got like 80% of it, I would say. And I think we say that for a lot of those Iowa State guys, but athletically, like, again, when I'm comparing to the previous staff, like, what did LeVar Keys have? He had 4.2 speed, burner. Jasir Rogers jumps out of the freaking gym, right?
I'm not saying he's better than Jasir Rogers. Like, whoa,
right.
Yeah,
my point is like, okay, so we're looking at, we're trying to compare all these different things and all that. But absolutely, I agree. Like, Whitver, why did like a Maryland or a Rutgers or, like you said, Vatech, West Virginia?
He would be great for any of those schools. That would be a slam dunk for him to be at any of those schools. That's the part. I understand, like, you're right. Jaquaden Guilford, like all those guys.
Jaquaden Guilford wanted to be like basically a 5-star. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Totally get it. I totally get that.
Yeah.
But for nobody to not even an offer from some of these schools. Like, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but it just, to me, I want to emphasize that I think this is the same thing that I saw from some of these Iowa State guys you mentioned we don't have necessarily the testing numbers. Bryson Williams is a good football player. He's a good safety. He's good at football. Ben Whitver is good at football. And these guys seem to have the size and the athletic testing measurables. So, if this is a 10-person class and 80% of them hit, and I'm just making stuff up right now, but it is interesting to me that I think there's more football players in this group per capita than I've seen in a bit. And maybe that's where I'm just landing, and I'm overemphasizing what's going on right now in this particular group. But anyway, that's
also,
what I got.
If they hit on 8 of these 10 players, that'd be a record. Yeah, because really, it's like you're hitting on half. Really, I mean, honestly, that's how you look at it. Like, or at least how I've always kind of looked at it. Like, whatever, the stars really don't matter a whole lot when they get here, and you just got to expect that half of those guys are going to flame out, and it is what it is. And that's why there's 85 guys on a roster, right? Because coaches know that as much as we can look at numbers and intangibles and all that stuff, sometimes you got to be a dog, and you don't know who is, who really loves football, right? Who loves it. You don't know those things until they get here and they get thrown into the fire, and it is what it is. So we'll find out with Ben Whitver and all these guys. But again, I'll come back to considering the situation and what is available out there and all those kind of things, it makes a lot of sense why Noah Polley would be like, yeah, this is a guy worth taking and developing and working with and see where things go.
And we'll see where they go. We're going to be tracking all of this. We'll see if being good at football and being big and fast and strong all help Ben Whitver become a good receiver for Penn State. He's going to be part of the class of 2026, and we'll see how any of that continues to develop because it's not totally over, as Ryan said. Not going to get to 20, but I'm curious to see where they land and all of that. And, of course,
they will get to 20 now. Sorry. Watch they will.
I don't know how, but it'll be a lot of work for us here on the YouTube channel, but it'll be good work because Penn State fans will be happy about it, I hope. But there's more to come as well from the transfer portal, from the end of the season, the start of the offseason. Subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Ryan, thank you so much. I know I kept you a little bit long. You got somewhere to be.
Good.
Appreciate you being here. We'll be back very soon with more from the BWI YouTube.